My mother stood at the church entrance telling guests I'd called off the wedding. Inside, I could hear the organ playing my processional music. I pulled up to St. Joseph's Cathedral at 2:47 for my 3 o'clock wedding and found my mother blocking the bride's entrance. She was wearing black. "Darling, what are you doing here? The ceremony doesn't start until 5. Mom, it's 2:47. The ceremony starts at 3. Look, the guests are already inside." "No, sweetheart. That's the Riverside Coleman wedding. Yours is at 5 in the chapel." "The chapel?" I booked the main cathedral. We sent out 200 invitations. She touched my arm through the car window. There was some confusion with the booking. "But don't worry, the chapel is lovely. More intimate. Just family." I parked and walked to the chapel entrance. It was locked. Back at the main entrance, Mom was gone. Through the cathedral doors, I could hear the organ beginning the processional. I called my fiancé, Brandon. His phone went straight to voicemail. I called his brother Luke, who was the best man. "Luke, where are you?" "Sophie? Why aren't you inside?" "I'm standing outside. My mother won't let me in. She says my wedding is at 5. Luke paused. "Your mom told us you were having second thoughts. Said you needed some time alone before the ceremony. She asked us to start without you." "What do you mean, start without me?" "I'm the bride. She said you wanted your cousin Bethany to stand in for the processional rehearsal, to calm your nerves. But the guests are all there. This isn't a rehearsal." "I know. Your mom said you might get overwhelmed seeing everyone at once. Bethany's just walking down the aisle so people aren't kept waiting. Then you'll swap in for the actual vows." I hung up and called my cousin Bethany. She didn't answer. I called my maid of honor, Rachel. "Pick up, pick up, pick up." Rachel answered in a whisper. "Soph, where are you? Your mom said you were in the bathroom having a panic attack." "I'm outside. Bethany's wearing my dress, isn't she?" There was silence. Then Rachel whispered faster. "She's walking down the aisle right now, in your dress, with your veil, your dad's arm. Sophie, she looks exactly like you from behind. Same height, same hair color. Your mom told everyone you asked Bethany to do the processional because of your anxiety." I could hear the organ music through Rachel's phone. "The wedding march. My wedding march. Put Brandon on. I can't. He's at the altar. Waiting. Your mom told him you wanted to surprise him by walking out from the side door after Bethany reaches the front. Like a switcheroo thing. She said you saw it on some wedding show." "Rachel, Bethany's not switching with me, is she?" Rachel's voice got smaller. "Your mom just handed Father Anthony a piece of paper. He looks confused. He's reading it. Sophie, he just announced that you've decided to have Bethany stand as your proxy for the ceremony due to a medical emergency." People are gasping. My mother had given away my wedding. I ran to the side door. It was locked from inside. Through the stained glass, I could see shapes moving. The ceremony continuing. My phone rang. It was Mom. "Sweetheart, I can explain. Bethany's been so depressed since Robert left her. She never got her dream wedding. You're young, you can get married anytime. But Bethany needs this now. She's 34. You're giving my wedding to Bethany? Because she got divorced?" "Not giving, darling. Sharing. She'll do the ceremony, take some photos, have the first dance. You and Brandon can do the legal paperwork next week at City Hall. But everyone we know is in there. My friends, my coworkers, Brandon's family from Ohio. And they all think you chose this. I told them you wanted to help Bethany heal. That you insisted she take your place as a gesture of family love. Some of them are crying at your selflessness. This is my wedding day. You'll have others. Bethany won't." I hung up and called Brandon, straight to voicemail again. Luke texted me. "Your mom took Brandon's phone. Said you didn't want him distracted during the ceremony." I stood outside the cathedral where my cousin was marrying my fiancé in my dress, while my mother conducted the orchestra of deception. Through the windows, I could hear Father Anthony's voice. "Do you, Brandon, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" I waited for someone to stop it, to say this was insane, that the bride wasn't even there. Instead, I heard Brandon's voice clear and strong. "I do." The words cut through the stained glass like broken promises. My hands went numb against the cold stone wall. Brandon just said yes to marrying someone who wasn't me. My phone slipped from my fingers and clattered on the concrete steps. Through the colored glass, I could see shadows moving at the altar. The organ music swelled into something triumphant and final. I grabbed the side door handle and yanked hard enough that pain shot through my shoulder. Locked. I slammed my palm against the wood once, twice, 10 times. My wedding ring cut into my finger with each impact. The door rattled in its frame but didn't budge. I screamed his name so loud my throat burned. Nothing changed inside. The ceremony kept going like I didn't exist. I moved to the next door and threw my whole body against it. The impact knocked the air from my lungs, but the door held firm. My vision blurred at the edges. I couldn't breathe right. Couldn't think past the image of Bethany in my dress standing where I should be. I ran along the side of the cathedral checking every entrance. All locked. Every single one. Mom had planned this down to the last detail. She'd made sure I couldn't get inside until she was ready for me to get inside. I circled back to the main entrance where she'd been standing earlier. Empty now. Just stone steps and closed doors. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It opened. Of course it did. She wanted me to come in this way. Wanted me to walk down that center aisle in front of everyone. I stepped into the vestibule and the organ music got louder. Through the inner doors, I could see the backs of heads filling every pew. 200 people watching my cousin marry my fiancé. My hand shook as I reached for the inner door handle. A man in a security uniform appeared from a side hallway. His face creased with confusion when he saw me. "Ma'am, the ceremony's already started. You'll need to wait until it's over to go in. I'm the bride." He looked me up and down, taking in my street clothes and wild hair. "The bride's already inside. I saw her walk down the aisle 20 minutes ago. That's my cousin wearing my dress. I'm Sophie. This is my wedding." The guard's expression shifted from confused to concerned. He took a step back and reached for his radio. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down." I pushed past him and shoved through the inner doors. They banged open and every head in the cathedral turned toward the sound. The organ music stuttered and stopped. I ran down the side aisle, my shoes loud against the marble floor. Faces blurred past me, mouths open in shock. I heard Mom's voice from somewhere up front, but I didn't stop. Didn't slow down. Just ran toward the altar where Bethany stood frozen in white lace and tulle. My veil cascaded down her back. My flowers clutched in her hands. Brandon stood next to her in his gray tuxedo, his face turned toward the commotion. Our eyes met across the remaining distance. I watched all the color drain from his skin. He stumbled backward like I'd shoved him. His mouth formed my name, but no sound came out. He looked at Bethany, then back at me, then at Bethany again. His hands came up between them like he needed to push her away. "Sophie?" His voice cracked on my name. "Sophie, what are you doing here?" Father Anthony stood behind them with his ceremony book still open, his finger marking a place on the page. The altar flowers formed a perfect arch behind them. My flowers, my arrangement, everything I'd chosen and planned and paid for. I stopped at the front of the aisle, breathing hard. Bethany turned to face me, and I saw my own face reflected back. Same height, same build, same dark hair styled exactly like mine. She'd even copied my makeup. From behind, in that dress, she could pass for me. That's what Mom had counted on. That's how she'd pulled this off. Brandon kept saying my name over and over like a prayer or an accusation. His eyes were wide and wet. He reached toward me, then pulled his hand back, reached out again. His whole body was shaking. Mom appeared from the front pew, her black dress stark against all the white and flowers. She grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. Her fingernails dug into my skin through my sleeve. "Sweetheart, you're making a scene. We can discuss this later in private. Everyone's staring. Let's just step outside for a moment." I yanked my arm free and turned to face the rows of guests. 200 faces stared back at me. My coworkers from the office, Brandon's family from Ohio, our college friends, distant relatives I barely knew. All of them sitting there thinking I'd chosen this, thinking I'd given my wedding away. My voice came out steady and clear despite the panic clawing at my chest. I never agreed to any of this. My mother locked me out of my own wedding. She told everyone I wanted Bethany to stand in for me, but that's a lie. I've been outside this whole time trying to get in. I didn't know this was happening until I heard Brandon say I do to someone who isn't me. The cathedral erupted. People stood up. Voices overlapped in confusion and shock. Someone gasped. Someone else said this can't be real. A woman in the back started crying. Mom's voice cut through the noise, loud and sharp. "She's having a breakdown. This is exactly why I arranged things this way. Sophie's been unstable for weeks. The stress of the wedding was too much for her. I was trying to help. Trying to make sure she didn't have to face all these people until she was ready." Bethany agreed to stand in temporarily so the ceremony could proceed. "Sophie clearly isn't well enough to be here right now. She needs professional help, not judgment." Several people nodded. I watched doubt creep across faces that had been sympathetic seconds before. Mom was good at this. She'd been doing it my whole life. Rewriting reality until people questioned their own eyes. Rachel broke away from the line of bridesmaids and came to stand beside me. Her pink dress rustled as she moved. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out firm. "That's not true. Sophie's mother lied to all of us. She told me Sophie was having a panic attack in the bathroom. She told the groomsmen Sophie wanted a practice run. She told Father Anthony there was a medical emergency. She took Brandon's phone so Sophie couldn't reach him. She fed everyone different stories and kept us separated so we couldn't compare notes. I watched it happen. We all did. We just didn't realize we were being manipulated until right now. Luke pushed his way out of the groomsmen's line. He pulled his phone from his pocket and held it up. His face had gone gray. I have texts from Sophie's mother saying Sophie was having a panic attack and needed Bethany to fill in. Time-stamped from an hour ago. She sent me 3 messages convincing me this was Sophie's idea. That Sophie wanted to surprise Brandon by having Bethany walk down the aisle first. He looked at me and his voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I should have questioned it. Should have insisted on talking to you directly. She was just so convincing and everything was happening so fast. Brandon finally found words. His voice came out raw and angry. What the hell is going on? He looked at Mom and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Nobody told me Sophie didn't want this. You said she planned the whole thing. You showed me texts. You said she was going to appear from the side door after Bethany reached the altar. That it was some kind of wedding show thing she saw online. You took my phone and said Sophie didn't want me distracted during the ceremony. His voice got louder. You told me she'd be here any second. That this was what she wanted. I do. The words hit me like ice water. Bethany reached up and yanked the veil from her head. Her hands were shaking so hard the fabric tore. She stumbled backward from Brandon and almost tripped on the hem of my dress. Tears were already running down her face and she kept looking between me and Mom and Brandon like she couldn't figure out who to apologize to first. I'm so sorry. I thought you knew. I swear I thought you knew. Your mom said you offered. She said you wanted me to have this because I never got a real wedding with Robert. She said you felt bad for me and this was your gift. I know it sounds crazy now, but she was so convincing and I wanted to believe it so badly. I needed this so badly after everything with Robert and the divorce and feeling like such a failure. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Father Anthony closed the ceremony book with a loud thump that echoed through the cathedral. His face had gone red and he looked more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen a priest look. This wedding cannot continue under these circumstances. He adjusted his glasses and his voice got firmer. A marriage ceremony requires the actual bride and groom to consent and participate, not proxy stand-ins, not substitutes. Clear deception has occurred here, and I cannot in good conscience proceed with any ceremony today. This is highly irregular and frankly disturbing. My mother's face changed so fast it was like watching a mask fall off. The concerned, loving mother expression vanished, and something cold and angry took its place. Her eyes went hard and her mouth pressed into a thin line. She turned on me and her voice came out sharp and accusing. You're being selfish and cruel to Bethany. You promised her she could have this day. You told me you wanted to help her heal. Now you're backing out just to hurt her and make her look bad in front of everyone. How dare you embarrass your cousin like this after everything she's been through? A man pushed his way out of the crowd holding a massive camera. Philip Sutherland. I recognized him from our planning meetings. He'd seemed nice then, but now his face looked disgusted. I have everything on camera. You arriving at 2:47, your mother blocking you, the locked doors, all of it. He held up the camera like evidence. I've been photographing weddings for 20 years and I have never seen anything like this psychological manipulation. This is abuse. Plain and simple abuse. A woman stood up from the third pew on the groom's side. She was tall with silver hair pulled back tight and she was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my car. Brandon's mother, Verity Montgomery. I'd only met her twice before and both times she'd been polite but distant. Now her voice cut through the chaos like a knife through butter. If Sophie's mother orchestrated this deception, then there will be legal consequences. Her family will not be associated with this kind of fraud and abuse. We will be consulting our attorneys about this matter. My father finally moved from where he'd been standing frozen near the altar. His face had gone gray, and he looked 10 years older than he had this morning. His voice came out thin and shaky. She told me this was just a rehearsal walkthrough before Sophie came out, that we were practicing the processional, so Sophie could see how it looked. I never would have walked Bethany down the aisle if I'd known the truth. I thought I was helping. I thought Sophie was backstage getting ready. A woman in a burgundy suit appeared from the side door looking panicked. The wedding coordinator. Her clipboard was clutched to her chest and she kept glancing between all of us like she was trying to figure out who was in charge. What do we want to do about the reception venue and the 200 guests? Everything is paid for. The food is ready. The band is setting up. People are staring at us waiting for some kind of resolution or explanation. I need to tell the venue something in the next 10 minutes or we're going to lose everything. I turned to look at Brandon. Really look at him. He was still standing at the altar in his tuxedo with Bethany's lipstick on his collar from where she must have hugged him. Did you really believe I would plan something this bizarre and hurtful? My voice cracked on the last word. He looked devastated. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking. Your mother was very convincing. She showed me texts. She had this whole story about your anxiety and the wedding show you saw and how you wanted to surprise me. I trusted her as my future mother-in-law. I feel like an idiot for not questioning it more. I should have insisted on talking to you directly. I should have known something was wrong. But everything was happening so fast and she kept saying you'd be here any second and I just believed her. My mother raised her voice suddenly and it carried across the whole cathedral. The reception will go on as planned and everyone should proceed to the venue. We can sort out this misunderstanding privately as a family. There's no reason to waste all the food and celebration. Let's all just take a breath and move forward with the evening. Verity Montgomery's voice came back even colder than before. There will be no reception celebrating this fraud. She stood up straighter and looked around at all the guests. The Montgomery family is leaving, and I suggest other guests do the same. Staying would be endorsing what just happened here. This is not a misunderstanding. This is calculated manipulation and abuse. We will not participate in pretending otherwise. I watch people in the pews turn to each other and whisper. Some of them grab their purses and jackets. A woman in the 5th row stands up and walks toward the center aisle. Her husband follows. Then another couple gets up. And another. The sound of rustling fabric and shuffling feet fills the cathedral as maybe half the guests decide they've seen enough. They move toward the exits in small groups. Some of them look at me as they pass and their faces show sympathy or sadness. Others glare at my mother with obvious disgust. The woman in the burgundy dress who sat near Brandon's family stops next to me and squeezes my shoulder without saying anything. An older man I recognize from my mother's church group won't even look at her as he walks by. But the other half of the guests just sit there frozen in their pews. They stare straight ahead or down at their laps. Their faces show confusion like they're trying to figure out what just happened and whose story to believe. A few of them keep glancing between me and my mother and Bethany, like they're waiting for someone to tell them what the right response is supposed to be. The silence from those who stay feels almost worse than the ones who left. My aunt walks up to my mother. Aunt Edith moves fast and her heels click hard against the marble floor. My mother turns toward her with this fake smile starting to form on her face like she's going to try to explain everything away. The crack of Edith's hand across my mother's cheek echoes through the cathedral. My mother stumbles sideways and her hand flies up to her face. The red mark spreads across her cheek instantly. I always knew you were controlling. Edith's voice shakes with anger. But I never imagined you were capable of something this sick and twisted. I'm ashamed to be related to you. My mother opens her mouth, but nothing comes out. Edith turns away from her and walks toward the exit without looking back. My mother just stands there touching her face with her eyes wide like she can't believe what just happened. Bethany makes this horrible sobbing sound and stumbles down from the altar. She's still wearing my dress and the veil hangs crooked on her head. She walks toward me with her hands out like she wants to grab mine. I'm so sorry. Her voice comes out in gasps between sobs. I'm so sorry, Sophie. I was just so desperate after Robert left. The divorce destroyed me, and I wanted to feel special again. I wanted one day where I could pretend everything was okay. She wipes her eyes and mascara smears across her cheeks. Your mom told me you felt sorry for me. She said you wanted to give me this gift because you knew how much I was hurting. She said you had another ceremony planned for next week that would be your real wedding. I wanted to believe it so badly. The story had so many holes in it, but I just kept telling myself it made sense because I needed it to be true. I look at Bethany standing there in my dress crying, and part of me does feel bad for her. She looks broken and small despite wearing the big white gown, but she still put on my dress. She still walked down that aisle with my father. She still stood at that altar next to my fiancé and let Father Anthony start the ceremony. I understand you were manipulated too. My voice sounds strange and flat in my own ears. But you still chose to put on my dress and marry my fiancé. The hurt in my voice makes her cry harder, and she covers her face with her hands. The veil falls completely off and lands on the floor between us. I can't comfort her right now. I just can't. She's not the victim here. I am. Brandon steps toward me and reaches for my hand. I pull away before he can touch me. How could you marry someone else? I stare at him and he looks away. Even if you thought it was temporary or part of some plan, how could you stand up there and say vows to another woman? He runs his hand through his hair and his other hand drops to his side. It all happened so fast. His words come out rushed. Your mother was so convincing and she had answers for everything. Every question I asked, she had this detailed explanation that made sense in the moment. But I know I messed up. I can see it in his eyes that he knows how badly he screwed this up. I should have insisted on talking to you first. I should have demanded to see you before anything started. I just trusted her because she's your mother, and I thought she had your best interests at heart. Father Anthony walks over to us, and his footsteps sound loud in the nearly empty cathedral. He clears his throat and looks uncomfortable. I need to tell you something important. He glances at Bethany and then back at me. The ceremony isn't legally valid. Bethany signed the marriage license as herself, not as your proxy. This was a religious ceremony under false pretenses, but no actual legal marriage occurred. He pulls the license from his pocket and shows me where Bethany signed her own name. It's the only good news in this entire disaster. At least Brandon didn't actually marry my cousin. At least that part can't follow us forever in legal documents. The cathedral feels huge and empty now. Most of the guests have left, and only close family, and the wedding party remains scattered in the front pews. My mother stands near the altar, still touching her cheek where Edith slapped her. She's talking to anyone who will listen, but most people turn away from her. I did this for Bethany's mental health. Her voice carries across the empty space. She was suicidal after her divorce. I had to do something to help her. Sophie is being unreasonable and dramatic. This was an act of love for family. A woman I don't recognize gets up and walks away while my mother is still talking. My mother follows her a few steps, still trying to explain, but the woman holds up her hand and keeps walking. Brandon's father stands up from his pew and walks toward my mother. He moves slowly and his face looks cold and hard. You're no longer welcome around my family. His voice cuts through my mother's rambling and she stops talking. What she did was psychological abuse and fraud. If you come near Brandon or Sophie again, I'll pursue legal action for the emotional distress you've caused. My mother's mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. Brandon's father turns to look at me and his expression softens slightly. Sophie, you have our full support in whatever you decide to do. Then he walks back to where his wife is standing and puts his arm around her shoulders. I need to get out of here before I completely fall apart in front of everyone who's left. My chest feels tight and my eyes burn with tears I've been holding back. Rachel appears next to me and picks up my purse from where I dropped it near the door. She grabs my arm gently. Come on, let's go. She guides me toward the exit and I let her because I can't think straight anymore. Behind us, I hear Brandon call my name, but I don't turn around. I just keep walking with Rachel toward the doors and the sunlight outside. Brandon is still standing at the altar in his tuxedo when I glance back one last time. He looks lost and small despite being over 6 feet tall. The cathedral doors close behind us and cut off the sound of my mother's voice still trying to explain herself to no one. The parking lot feels too bright after the dim cathedral. I squint against the sunlight and try to remember where I parked my car. Several guests are standing around in small groups talking in low voices. When they see me, they stop talking and stare. An older woman I recognize from Brandon's family walks over to me. I'm so sorry this happened to you, dear. Her eyes look kind and sad. We all believe you. Your mother has always seemed very controlling. I'm not surprised she did something like this. A man standing nearby nods his agreement. My own mother was like that. Never as extreme as this, but I recognize the patterns. You'll need to set firm boundaries going forward. 3 more people stop me before I reach my car to say similar things. They believe me. They saw through my mother's lies. Some of them mention that my mother has always seemed manipulative or overbearing at family gatherings. It makes me wonder what else I've been normalizing my whole life. What other crazy behavior did I excuse as just mom being mom? How many red flags did I miss because I was too close to see them clearly? Rachel's car smells like vanilla air freshener and old coffee. I climb into the passenger seat and she doesn't ask questions, just starts driving toward her apartment across town. My hands won't stop shaking. They're trembling so hard I have to sit on them to make it stop. Rachel keeps glancing over at me while she drives, but I can't look at her because if I do, I might completely fall apart. The shock that held me together in the parking lot is wearing off now. My whole body starts shaking, not just my hands. My teeth chatter even though it's warm in the car. Rachel reaches over and turns up the heat without saying anything. The full horror of what just happened hits me in waves. My mother gave away my wedding. She locked me out of the cathedral. She dressed my cousin in my dress. She told everyone I wanted this. She convinced Brandon to say vows to someone else. The shaking gets worse and I wrap my arms around myself trying to hold it together, but I can't stop. Rachel pulls over into a gas station parking lot and puts the car in the park. She unbuckles her seatbelt and reaches over to hug me while I shake and cry. I'm making these horrible gasping sounds that don't even sound human. She just holds me and doesn't try to make me stop or tell me it will be okay, because we both know nothing about this is okay. When I can finally breathe again, Rachel starts driving. My phone buzzes in my purse. Then it buzzes again, and again, and again. The buzzing doesn't stop. I pull it out and the screen is full of notifications. Texts and missed calls and voicemails piling up so fast I can't even read them. Some are from numbers I recognize, some I don't. I open the first text, and it's from my mom's friend Carol saying she's disappointed in me for humiliating my family. The next one is from my coworker Amy asking if I'm okay and saying she can't believe what happened. Another from a number I don't know calling me selfish and saying Bethany deserves happiness too. Then one from Luke saying he's so sorry and he should have called me directly. The messages keep coming. More accusations, more support, more questions. My phone won't stop buzzing in my hand. I scroll through them, getting more and more sick to my stomach. Someone says I'm cruel for backing out of helping my cousin. Someone else says my mother is insane and they're here for me. Another person I barely know has opinions about my mental health and my family drama. I can't handle this. I can't read one more message from people who think they know what happened or what I should do. I turn off my phone completely and shove it back in my purse. Rachel's apartment is on the third floor of an older building with no elevator. We climb the stairs in silence and she unlocks her door. The apartment is small and cluttered with books and art supplies, but it feels safe. She points me toward the couch and goes to make tea in her tiny kitchen. I sit down and stare at the wall. My brain won't stop replaying everything. Brandon saying I do. My mother's voice on the phone explaining why she gave away my wedding. Bethany walking down the aisle in my dress. The guests staring. The cathedral doors locked. Every moment plays over and over like a nightmare I can't wake up from. Someone knocks on Rachel's door. She looks through the peephole and her eyes go wide. She mouths Brandon's name at me. I shake my head, but she's already opening the door. Brandon stands there still wearing his tuxedo. His bow tie is undone and hanging around his neck. His eyes are red and swollen like he's been crying for hours. He looks at me through the doorway and his face crumples. Rachel steps aside to let him in, and he walks toward me slowly like I might run away. I stay on the couch because I don't trust my legs to hold me up. He kneels down in front of me and starts talking fast. His words tumble out all mixed together about how sorry he is and how he should have questioned things more. He says my mother was so convincing and everything happened so fast. He keeps saying he's an idiot and he knows he messed up and he'll do anything to fix this. His hands reach for mine, but I pull away. He's still wearing his wedding ring. The one we picked out together 6 months ago. The one he put on today while standing next to my cousin. I tell him I need time. The words come out flat and emotionless because I don't have any emotion left right now. I need time to process everything before I can even think about us or our relationship or what happens next. The image of him saying I do to Bethany is burned into my brain. I watched my fiancé marry my cousin. I heard him say those words through the cathedral doors while I stood outside shaking and crying and trying to get in. I don't know if I can get past that. I don't know if I want to. Brandon's face goes even more pale and he nods like he understands, but I can see the panic in his eyes. He's terrified I'm going to leave him. He should be terrified. Brandon stands up slowly. He pulls out his phone and writes down his number and the name of the hotel where he's staying. He can't go back to the house we were supposed to move into together after the honeymoon. All our boxes are there. All our wedding gifts. Our whole future packed up and waiting for us in a house he can't face right now. He puts the paper on Rachel's coffee table and backs toward the door. He says he loves me. He says he'll wait as long as I need. But I can see the fear written all over his face that I might never forgive him. That this might be the end of us. He leaves and Rachel locks the door behind him. I pick up the paper with his hotel information and stare at his handwriting. It looks shaky like his hands were trembling when he wrote it. That night I lie on Rachel's couch under a blanket she gave me, but I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see the cathedral. I hear the organ music. I see Bethany in my dress. I hear Brandon's voice saying I do. My brain won't turn off. It just keeps playing the same horrible scenes over and over in different orders. Rachel comes out of her bedroom around 2 a.m. and finds me still awake staring at the ceiling. She sits down on the floor next to the couch and asks if I want to talk. I don't want to talk, but I need to do something with all this chaos in my head. She gets a notebook and pen from her desk. We start making a list. Everything that happened. Everyone who was involved. What my mother actually did. The lies she told. Who she told them to. When she told them. We fill up 6 pages with details and timeline and names. Writing it down makes it feel more real somehow. More concrete. Less like a nightmare I imagined. My phone rings in the morning and wakes me up from the 2 hours of sleep I finally got. Rachel must have turned it back on. I grab it off the coffee table and see Dad on the screen. I answer and his voice sounds hollow and broken. He says he's leaving my mother. The words hang in the air between us while I try to process what he just said. He explains that he spent 30 years making excuses for her behavior. 30 years telling himself she meant well, or she was just trying to help, or she didn't realize how she came across. But this crossed a line he can't uncross. He can't make excuses anymore. He can't pretend this is normal or okay or something he can overlook. His voice cracks when he says he's ashamed he didn't protect me better. That he walked Bethany down the aisle because my mother told him it was a rehearsal. That he should have known something was wrong. That he should have called me directly instead of trusting her. I tell him it's not his fault, but he doesn't believe me. Neither do I, really. After I hang up with Dad, I look at my phone. 47 missed calls from my mother. I scroll through the voicemails. She's left dozens of them. I listen to the first one, and her voice is sweet and apologetic. She's so sorry for the confusion. She just wanted to help Bethany. She didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. The second voicemail is different. Her voice is sharp and angry. I'm being dramatic and unreasonable. I'm making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. The third one, she's crying and defending Bethany. My cousin was so depressed. She needed this. I'm being cruel and selfish. The fourth one, she's back to apologizing, but it sounds fake now. The messages cycle through the same patterns over and over. Sorry, then angry, then defensive, then sorry again. She insists this is all a misunderstanding, that I'm blowing everything out of proportion, that we can fix this if I just calm down and listen to her side. I delete all of them without listening to the rest. Rachel makes coffee, and I call the lawyer that Verity gave me the number for yesterday. The lawyer's voice is calm and professional as I explain what happened. She asks questions and takes notes. When I finish, she's quiet for a moment. Then she explains that no legal marriage occurred because Bethany signed the marriage license as herself, not as my proxy. The ceremony was religious but not legally binding. But I might have grounds for civil action. Emotional distress, fraud, the financial losses from the ruined wedding. She asks if I want to pursue legal action against my mother. I don't know. I tell her I need time to think. She says to call her back when I'm ready and she'll help me figure out my options. My email notification goes off and I see Bethany's name. The subject line says, "I'm so sorry." I almost delete it without reading, but something makes me open it instead. The email is long. Really long. Bethany confesses everything. She explains how my mother first approached her 2 months ago. How my mother told her I felt terrible about Bethany's divorce and wanted to do something special for her. How the plan evolved from Bethany attending the wedding to Bethany participating in the ceremony to Bethany actually standing in as the bride. She admits she knew something felt wrong. She knew it seemed weird that I never called her directly to discuss it. She knew my mother's explanations didn't quite add up. But she was so desperate for a wedding experience after her divorce that she convinced herself it was okay. She wanted to believe my mother's story so badly that she ignored all the red flags. She's moving back to her home state. She can't face anyone here. She's ashamed and sorry, and she knows sorry isn't enough. She ends the email saying she'll understand if I never forgive her. I close my laptop and put my head in my hands. The silence in the apartment feels heavy and thick. My phone buzzes on the coffee table. I look at the screen and see an unknown number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. A man's voice comes through, professional but kind. "Sophie, this is Philip Sutherland. I was the photographer at your wedding." I pause, not sure what to say. He continues quickly. "I wanted to reach out because I have all the photos and videos from Saturday. The whole thing. Everything that happened." His voice gets quieter. I didn't realize something was wrong until it was too late. I should have questioned things sooner. I ask him what he means by everything. He explains that his cameras were rolling from the moment I arrived at 2:47. He has footage of my mother blocking me at the entrance, video of me trying the locked chapel door, audio of the phone calls I made standing outside. He recorded the entire ceremony inside, including the moment I burst through the side door. He says the footage clearly shows the deception. My mother's lies are documented in real time. He offers to give me all of it for free. No charge for any of the wedding coverage. He says if I decide to pursue legal action, the evidence might be useful. His voice cracks a little when he says he feels terrible. He didn't realize something was wrong sooner. I thank him, and we arrange a time for him to send over the files. After I hang up, I sit there staring at my phone. The idea of watching footage of my own wedding disaster makes my stomach hurt. But having proof might matter. Rachel comes back into the room with more coffee. She asks who called, and I tell her about the photographer. She sits down next to me and says having evidence is good, that it proves I'm not crazy or making things up. I nod, but I still feel numb. The next 3 days blur together in a haze of not eating and not sleeping. I stay at Rachel's apartment because I can't face going home. My apartment feels contaminated now, like my mother's lies have seeped into the walls. Rachel takes time off work to stay with me. She doesn't say it out loud, but I know it's because I keep having panic attacks when I'm alone. The first one hits me on Monday morning. I wake up, and for about 5 seconds I forget what happened. Then it all crashes back. The cathedral, my dress on someone else. Brandon saying I do to my cousin. My chest gets tight and I can't breathe right. My hands start shaking and I feel like the room is closing in. Rachel finds me on the bathroom floor trying to remember how to breathe. She sits with me and talks in a calm, steady voice until the panic fades. It happens again Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday night. Each time Rachel is there, she doesn't tell me it will be okay or that I need to calm down. She just sits with me and waits it out. I barely eat anything. Food tastes like nothing. Rachel brings me soup and crackers and I force down a few bites to make her stop worrying. I sleep maybe 2 hours a night. Every time I close my eyes, I see Bethany in my veil. I hear the organ music. I watch Brandon's face as he realizes I'm actually there. My phone keeps buzzing with messages, but I don't look at most of them. I can't handle reading what people think about me right now. Brandon texts every single day. Long messages apologizing and explaining, asking if he can see me, begging me to let him make this right. I read them, but I don't respond. On Wednesday afternoon, I finally texted back. One sentence. I'll meet you at Corner Coffee on Thursday at 2. He responds immediately saying he'll be there. The next day, I get dressed in real clothes for the first time since Saturday. Rachel offers to come with me, but I tell her I need to do this alone. I arrive at the coffee shop early and pick a table in the back corner. My hands shake as I order a coffee I won't drink. Brandon walks in exactly at 2. He looks terrible. His eyes are red and his face is pale. He's wearing jeans and a wrinkled shirt. I've never seen him look this messy. He sits down across from me and just stares for a minute like he's checking to make sure I'm real. I ask him to explain everything from the beginning, step by step. How did my mother convince him this was okay? He takes a deep breath and starts talking. He pulls out his phone and shows me text messages from my mother going back 2 weeks. Messages where she slowly built this story about my anxiety, about how I was scared of big crowds, about how I wanted to do something creative and different for the ceremony. He scrolls through conversations where she suggested the switcheroo idea, made it sound fun and romantic, like something from a movie. She sent him links to wedding blogs about creative ceremony ideas. She called him multiple times, reassuring him this was what I wanted. She said I was too nervous to talk to him directly about it, that I needed space to prepare myself emotionally. Brandon's voice cracks as he shows me message after message. I can see how carefully she built the lie, how she answered every question he had, how she made it all sound reasonable and loving. She told him the proxy thing was my gift to Bethany, that I wanted to help my cousin heal from her divorce. She painted me as this selfless person doing something beautiful for family. Brandon believed her because why wouldn't he? She was going to be his mother-in-law. He trusted her. I asked the question that's been burning in my mind since Saturday. Why didn't you insist on talking to me directly before the ceremony? Brandon's eyes fill with tears. He says he should have. He knows he should have. But my mother kept saying I needed space, that talking to him would make my anxiety worse. She convinced him that respecting my boundaries meant giving me room to handle things my way. He admits he thought it was weird. He had doubts. But she was so confident and so convincing. She kept reassuring him everything was fine. He says he trusted her judgment as my mother. He thought she knew what I needed better than he did. His voice breaks completely when he says he knows that's not good enough, that he failed me when I needed him to question things, that he should have called me anyway, should have demanded to hear it from me directly. Tears run down his face as he says he's so sorry, that he hates himself for not protecting me, that he can't stop seeing my face when I ran into the cathedral. I sit there watching him cry and I don't know what to feel. Part of me wants to reach across the table and hold his hand. Part of me wants to scream at him. Part of me is just empty. We sit in that coffee shop for 3 hours. The conversation goes in circles. Brandon explaining, me asking questions, him showing me more evidence of my mother's manipulation, me trying to understand how this happened. Other customers come and go. The barista refills our cups twice. Outside the window, the afternoon light fades. I start to see how my mother played everyone, how she told different lies to different people, how she made sure no one compared stories until it was too late. I realize Brandon was manipulated too, that he's a victim of her scheme just like me. But I'm still hurt. The image of him standing at that altar with Bethany won't leave my head. He married someone else, even if he thought it was temporary, even if he believed my mother's lies. He said I do to my cousin in my dress at my wedding. I don't know if I can rebuild trust after that. I don't know if seeing him won't always bring back that moment, that horrible, sick feeling of watching through stained glass as my life fell apart. When we finally run out of things to say, I tell Brandon I need real time apart. Not just a few days, real time to figure out what I want, to process everything that happened, to decide if our relationship can survive this. His face crumples. He asks how much time. I tell him I don't know. Weeks, maybe months. As long as it takes for me to know what I feel. He looks devastated, but he nods. He says he'll do whatever I need. that he'll wait as long as it takes, that he loves me and he's so sorry. He asks if he can text me sometimes. I tell him once a week, just to check in, nothing more. He agrees. We stand up to leave, and for a second it looks like he might try to hug me. But he doesn't. He just looks at me with red eyes and says he's sorry one more time. Then he walks out. I sit back down and stare at my cold coffee. My phone buzzes with a text from Rachel asking if I'm okay. I tell her I'm on my way back. That night, I'm lying on Rachel's couch trying to sleep when someone starts pounding on the apartment door. Heavy, aggressive knocking that makes the whole door shake. Rachel sits up from her bed in the other room. We hear my mother's voice screaming from the hallway. "Sophie, I know you're in there. Open this door right now. We need to talk about this. You're tearing this family apart." Rachel grabs her phone and dials 911 while my mother keeps yelling. "You need to forgive Bethany. She's your cousin. She's family. This grudge you're holding is cruel and selfish." The pounding gets louder. Rachel is talking to the dispatcher giving the address. My mother screams that I'm being dramatic, that I'm making everything worse, that I need to move on and stop punishing everyone. Her voice gets higher and more frantic. "You're destroying everything. Your father left me because of you. The whole family is taking sides because of you. Just open the door and we can fix this." I stay frozen on the couch. My whole body feels locked in place. Rachel comes out of her room and sits next to me. She's still on the phone with 911. The dispatcher says police are on the way. My mother's voice changes. Now she's crying. "Please, Sophie. I'm your mother. I love you. I did this for Bethany. She needed this. You're young. You have time. Please just talk to me." The words cycle between angry and pleading, demanding and begging. It goes on for what feels like forever, but is probably only 10 minutes. Finally, we hear sirens. My mother's voice cuts off mid-sentence. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. A man's voice saying, "Ma'am, you need to step away from the door." My mother starts explaining to the officers, telling them I'm her daughter, that we had a family disagreement, that she just wants to talk. The officer's voice stays calm and professional. He asks her to come with them. She refuses. She says she has a right to talk to her daughter. The officer's voice gets firmer. He tells her she's disturbing the peace and harassing the residents, that she needs to leave now or she'll be arrested. My mother's voice rises again. She starts yelling about how I've turned everyone against her, how I'm lying about what happened, how I'm trying to destroy her life. There's a knock on Rachel's door. A different voice. "Police. Can you open the door, please?" Rachel looks at me and I nod. She opens the door and 2 officers stand there. One stays with us while the other deals with my mother in the hall. The officer with us asks if we're okay. Rachel explains who my mother is and what's been happening. The officer asks me if I want to file a harassment report. I nod. He pulls out a notebook and starts taking my statement. I tell him about the wedding, about my mother giving my ceremony to my cousin, about the calls and messages since then, about how she found Rachel's address somehow. The officer writes everything down. When I finish, he suggests I consider filing for a restraining order. He says my mother's behavior is escalating, that she's refusing to accept responsibility, that this kind of harassment often gets worse before it gets better. He gives me information about how to file, says the report he's writing tonight will help support my case. Through the open door, I can hear my mother still arguing with the other officer, her voice echoing down the hallway. Eventually, the sounds fade. The officer tells us she's been removed from the property and given a warning. He says if she comes back to call 911 immediately. After the police leave, Rachel locks the door and puts a chair under the handle. We sit in silence. My hands are still shaking. The next morning, I call the lawyer again. The one Verity recommended. I tell her about last night, about my mother showing up and the police report, about the officer's suggestion for a restraining order. The lawyer listens carefully. She asks specific questions about the harassment, about the wedding, about my mother's behavior patterns. When I finish, she explains what a restraining order means. It would legally prohibit my mother from contacting me, from coming near me or my home, from showing up at my work. She says given the escalating behavior and the police report from last night, I have strong grounds for an order. She asks if this is what I want. I think about my mother's voice screaming through Rachel's door last night. Think about the 47 missed calls, the cycling voicemails, the manipulation, the lies. I tell the lawyer yes, I want to file. She says she'll start the paperwork, that we'll need to go to court for a hearing, that I'll have to face my mother and explain to a judge why I need protection from her. The word protection feels strange. This is my mother, the woman who raised me. But I think about Saturday, about standing outside the cathedral, about watching my wedding happen without me. I tell the lawyer I'm ready, whatever it takes. She says she'll be in touch soon with the court date. After I hang up, I sit with my phone in my hands. This feels both necessary and completely heartbreaking. I'm getting a restraining order against my own mother. The thought makes my chest tight. But I don't know what else to do. She won't stop. She won't listen. She won't accept what she did. Rachel brings me coffee and asks how the call went. I tell her about the restraining order. She nods and says it's the right choice, that I deserve to feel safe. I want to believe her. The courthouse steps felt cold under my shoes 2 weeks later. My lawyer met me at the entrance and walked me through what would happen. My mother had hired someone too. We'd each present our case and the judge would decide. Inside the courtroom, I sat at a table with my lawyer while my mother sat across the aisle with hers. She wore a navy suit and pearls. Her hair was perfect. She looked like someone's kind grandmother, not someone who'd orchestrated a wedding theft. When the judge entered, we all stood. He was older, gray hair, reading glasses on a chain. He looked at the papers in front of him and asked my lawyer to begin. She explained the wedding situation first, then the harassment after, the phone calls, the messages, showing up at Rachel's apartment. The police report from that night. My mother's lawyer stood up and started talking about how I was vindictive, that I was making up stories because I had mental health issues, that my mother was just a concerned parent trying to help her unstable daughter. The lawyer made me sound crazy and cruel, like I was the problem. Then my lawyer pulled out her laptop. She asked if she could show video evidence. The judge nodded. She turned the screen so everyone could see. It was Philip's footage from the wedding day. Me arriving at the cathedral at 2:47. My mother blocking the entrance in her black dress. The timestamp right there in the corner. Then footage of me trying the locked doors. Calling people on my phone. Standing outside while the ceremony happened. Then inside the cathedral. Bethany walking down the aisle in my dress. Brandon at the altar looking confused. My mother handing papers to father. The announcement about the proxy ceremony. People gasping. The judge leaned forward watching closely. The video showed my mother moving through the crowd afterward, talking to people, touching their arms, managing the situation. Then it showed me bursting through the side door. My face when I saw Bethany at the altar. Brandon stepping back. The chaos. Everything. The judge watched the whole thing without speaking. When it ended, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He asked my mother's lawyer if he had any response to the video evidence. The lawyer started talking about context and misunderstandings, but the judge held up his hand. He looked at my mother directly. He asked her if she locked me out of my own wedding. She started to answer, but he cut her off. He said he'd seen enough. He was granting the restraining order immediately. My mother's face changed. The pleasant grandmother mask cracked. Her mouth opened and rage poured out. She stood up and started screaming that I was an ungrateful daughter, that she did everything for me, that I was destroying the family. The judge banged his gavel and told her to sit down. She kept screaming. Her lawyer tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off. She pointed at me across the courtroom, called me selfish and cruel, said I'd turned everyone against her. The judge banged his gavel again. He warned her about contempt of court. She finally sat down, but her hands were shaking. Her face was red. The judge explained the terms of the restraining order. My mother couldn't contact me, couldn't come within 500 feet of me, couldn't call, text, email, or send messages through other people. If she violated the order, she'd be arrested. He signed the papers and handed them to the clerk. Outside the courthouse, my lawyer told me I did well, that the video evidence made the decision easy. I thanked her and walked to my car. My phone started buzzing before I even left the parking lot. Text messages from family members. My cousin Sarah said she was cutting ties with my mother, that what happened in court proved everything. My Uncle Tom said he'd always known my mother was controlling, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. Aunt Edith called me that evening. Her voice was shaky. She said she'd been talking to other family members, that they'd been sharing stories about my mother's behavior over the years, small manipulations they'd each experienced, reality rewrites they'd witnessed. She said this wedding thing was so extreme it finally opened everyone's eyes, that they could see the pattern now. She apologized for not seeing it sooner, for not protecting me better. I told her it wasn't her fault, that my mother was good at hiding her worst behavior, making it seem normal. The next day, I had my first appointment with a therapist named Violet. She specialized in family trauma. Her office was small and comfortable with soft lighting and plants. She asked me to tell her what happened. I started with the wedding day, and she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked about my childhood, my relationship with my mother growing up. I told her my mother always had opinions about everything, my clothes, my friends, my activities. I thought it was normal. Violet asked if my mother had ever manipulated situations before, rewritten reality to match what she wanted. I started thinking, really thinking. There was my high school graduation party. I'd wanted to invite my friends, but my mother said we should keep it small and family only. She told everyone I was too shy for a big party, that I'd asked for something quiet. But I never said that. There was college. I'd wanted to study art, but my mother convinced me to do business instead. She told everyone I'd changed my mind on my own, that I realized art wasn't practical, but she'd worked on me for months, wearing me down, making me doubt myself. There was my first serious boyfriend in college. My mother didn't like him. She told him I was planning to break up with him, told me he was planning to break up with me. We broke up confused and hurt, both thinking the other wanted out. I'd never connected these things before, never seen the pattern. Violet said manipulation victims often don't recognize it because they're conditioned to accept the manipulator's version of reality. That my mother had been training me my whole life to doubt my own perceptions. In our sessions over the following weeks, I kept remembering more. More times my mother had orchestrated outcomes. More times she'd lied to different people to create the situation she wanted. More times I'd let her. Violet helped me understand it wasn't my fault. That children learn to survive in their family systems. That I'd learned to go along with my mother's reality because fighting it was exhausting and pointless. But now I was angry. Really angry. Not just about the wedding, but about years of manipulation I'd accepted as normal. After a month of individual therapy, Violet suggested bringing Brandon in. She said we needed supervised conversations to work through what happened, to see if the relationship could be rebuilt. Brandon came to the next session looking nervous. He sat across from me in Violet's office. We started talking with her guidance. He explained how my mother had manipulated him too. The texts she'd sent, the phone calls, how she'd built this whole story about my anxiety and the switcheroo plan, how she'd taken his phone right before the ceremony, how everything happened so fast he didn't have time to think. Violet asked him why he didn't insist on talking to me directly. He said my mother kept saying I needed space, that I was overwhelmed, that he'd see me in a few minutes anyway. He said he trusted her as his future mother-in-law, that he never imagined she'd lie about something this important. I asked him how he could say vows to someone else, even thinking it was temporary. He started crying, said he didn't know, that it felt wrong but everyone was watching and my mother kept assuring him it was what I wanted, that he felt trapped in the moment. Violet pointed out that Brandon was a victim too, that my mother had manipulated both of us. That didn't erase the hurt, but it helped me see he wasn't the enemy. We had several more sessions together. Brandon was seeing his own therapist too, working through guilt and learning to recognize manipulation. Slowly, I started to see him differently. Not as the person who married my cousin, but as someone who got caught in my mother's web just like me. I decided I wanted to try rebuilding things with Brandon, not because everything was fixed or because I'd forgotten what happened, but because months of therapy helped me see he was manipulated too. We met at a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning when neither of us had work. Brandon looked nervous, stirring his coffee without drinking it. We talked for 3 hours about what trying again would actually mean. I told him I needed him to question things instead of just accepting what people told him. He needed to communicate directly with me about everything, not through other people or assumptions. We agreed to keep seeing Violet together and separately. No rushing into living together or planning another wedding. He had to prove through his actions, not just words, that he understood what went wrong and wouldn't let it happen again. Brandon reached across the table and asked if he could hold my hand. I let him. His palm was sweaty and he kept apologizing for that, which made me almost smile for the first time in months. 2 weeks later, my mother showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of helping a customer when I saw her through the glass doors. My hands started shaking so hard I had to set down the papers I was holding. She walked right up to the reception desk and asked to see me. My coworker noticed my face and told my mother I wasn't available. My mother started raising her voice, saying she had a right to see her daughter, and I was being dramatic about a simple misunderstanding. Security escorted her out while she yelled about how ungrateful I was. I called the police from my manager's office and filed a report. The officer who came said this was a clear violation of the restraining order, and my mother would face consequences. 3 days later, a letter arrived at my apartment. It was from my mother, but sent through my cousin on her side of the family. The envelope had my cousin's return address, but inside was my mother's handwriting going on for 6 pages about how I was tearing the family apart. She said Bethany was suffering because of my selfishness, and I needed to forgive everyone and move on. I photographed every page and sent them to my lawyer and the police. My mother ended up back in court facing the judge who'd granted the original restraining order. He was not happy. She got fined $2,000, and he told her in very clear terms that if she violated the order again, she'd face jail time. My mother's lawyer tried to argue she was just a concerned parent, but the judge cut him off and said concerned parents don't orchestrate wedding fraud and then stalk their children. An email appeared in my inbox from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "From Bethany," and I almost deleted it without reading. But something made me open it. Bethany had moved to Oregon and was living with a friend from college. She wrote that she was seeing a therapist twice a week working through her divorce trauma and what she called her desperation issues. She admitted she knew something was wrong when my mother first approached her with the plan. She knew it was crazy and manipulative, but she was so destroyed after Robert left that she wanted to believe my mother's story. She wanted to believe I was generous enough to give her this gift. She said that didn't make it okay, and she took full responsibility for putting on my dress and walking down that aisle. She said she understood if I never forgave her and she wasn't asking me to. She just wanted me to know she was getting help and facing what she did. I read the email 3 times and then closed my laptop. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would, but not yet. 6 months after the cathedral disaster, Brandon and I decided to get married for real. Not a big wedding with 200 guests and a cathedral and all the things that got stolen from me. Just us at the courthouse with the people who actually supported us through everything. We picked a Friday afternoon in October. I wore a simple blue dress I bought the day before. Brandon wore the suit he wore to work. My father came. Brandon's parents came. Rachel and Luke came. That was it. 6 people in a courthouse waiting room that smelled like floor cleaner and old paper. The clerk called our names and we walked into a small office with a desk and an American flag in the corner. The woman who performed the ceremony had done this probably 1,000 times, and her voice was flat and professional. She asked if we had our license and witnesses. We did. She started reading from a card about the legal responsibilities of marriage. Brandon looked at me the whole time she was talking. Really looked at me, not past me or through me. When she asked if he took me as his lawfully wedded wife, he said yes while staring straight into my eyes. His voice didn't waver. This time when he said those words, they were actually for me. Actually to me. And I felt something unlock in my chest that had been tight since that day at the cathedral. The ceremony took maybe 4 minutes total. The woman signed our license and congratulated us in the same flat voice she'd used for everything else. We walked out into the courthouse hallway as legally married people. It felt nothing like the wedding I'd planned for 2 years. It felt better somehow. More honest, more real. We went to dinner at the Italian restaurant where Brandon and I had our first date. The owner knew us and gave us the corner booth without asking. Ross Kent stood up with his wine glass and said something about how real love survives even the worst circumstances. His voice got thick when he talked about how proud he was of both of us for doing the hard work instead of giving up. Verity Montgomery added that she was proud of us too. She said healing and rebuilding takes more courage than starting fresh, and she was glad to officially welcome me to their family. She'd been calling me her daughter-in-law for months already, but now it was legal. My father sat next to me and squeezed my hand under the table. Rachel took about 50 photos on her phone even though I told her to stop. Luke made a joke about how this was the least dramatic wedding he'd ever been to, and everyone laughed too loud because we were all thinking about the other one. After dinner, my father walked me to my car in the parking lot. The October air was cold and I could see my breath. He stopped me before I got in and told me he was proud of how I handled everything. He said watching me set boundaries and demand honesty taught him he could do the same. Leaving my mother was the best decision he'd made in decades. He looked older than I remembered, but also lighter somehow, like he'd put down something heavy he'd been carrying. He hugged me and said he loved me, and he was sorry he didn't protect me better. I told him it wasn't his fault. We were both victims of the same person. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me yet. Maybe someday he would. Brandon and I moved into a new apartment in November. Neither of us had lived there before, so it was truly ours. Not his place or my place, but our place. We picked out furniture together and argued about where to put the couch and whether we needed a coffee table. Normal couple stuff. We were both still seeing Violet individually and together once a week. Working through trust issues and communication patterns and all the damage that came from what happened. Some days were harder than others. Some days I looked at Brandon and still saw him standing at that altar next to Bethany. But most days I saw the man who was trying, really trying, to build something healthier than what we had before. A year after the wedding disaster, I woke up on a Saturday morning and realized I felt okay. Not perfect, not healed completely, but okay. I had strong boundaries with my family. My mother had no access to me and no power over my life. My relationship with Brandon was different from before, but stronger in some ways. We talked about everything now, sometimes too much, but at least we talked. I'd learned to recognize manipulation and gaslighting when I saw it. I could spot the patterns my mother used, and I saw them in other people too sometimes. That awareness felt like armor. My lawyer called in December to say my mother was trying to contact me again, this time through her lawyer. She claimed she wanted to apologize and reconcile. She said she understood now that what she did was wrong and she'd been in therapy working on herself. My lawyer asked what I wanted to do. I told him to respond through official channels that I'd accepted what happened, but I wasn't willing to have my mother in my life. That boundary was permanent. Not because I hadn't forgiven her, but because I knew her patterns too well now. An apology wouldn't change who she was or what she was capable of. My lawyer drafted a formal response and sent it. My mother's lawyer replied asking if I'd consider mediation or family counseling. I said no. Some relationships can't be fixed and shouldn't be. That was okay. I was okay. Rachel came over the next Thursday with Thai food, and we sat on my couch eating pad Thai straight from the containers. She told me about a disastrous first date she'd been on where the guy spent 2 hours talking about his cryptocurrency investments. I laughed so hard I snorted noodles, and she said that was the most normal sound she'd heard from me in months. We ended up watching stupid reality TV, and she fell asleep on my shoulder around midnight. I covered her with a blanket and left her there because it felt good to have someone close who wasn't trying to fix me or asking if I was okay every 5 minutes. The next morning, she made coffee, and we sat at my tiny kitchen table talking about nothing important. She mentioned that being my maid of honor had been weird since she technically stood up for me at 2 different weddings. I asked which one counted, and she said obviously the courthouse one because that's where I actually showed up. We both started laughing and couldn't stop, the kind of laughing that hurts your stomach and makes your eyes water. She said she was glad she got to see me actually get married eventually, even if it was in a government building with fluorescent lights instead of a cathedral. I told her I was grateful she stayed through everything when she could have walked away from the crazy. Brandon and I started planning something small for our first anniversary in April. Just dinner at the same restaurant with his parents and my dad and Rachel and Luke. Nothing fancy or complicated, just the people who showed up when it mattered. I was folding laundry one Saturday when Brandon asked if I wanted to invite anyone else, and I realized I didn't. Those 6 people were my family now, the ones who earned their place instead of demanding it because of blood. Life still had hard days where I woke up angry or sad for no clear reason. Sometimes I saw a woman with dark hair in a store and my heart started racing before I realized it wasn't my mother. But I had real boundaries now, and I could spot manipulation from a mile away. I knew what healthy relationships looked like because I'd built them myself, piece by piece, with people who showed up honestly. That felt like enough.